students, welcome to week 3, and I'm just gonna do a quick recap of what we have coming up this week. So looking ahead, we're gonna start paper number 1 in week 5. Your theses will be due at the start of that week. So next week we'll spend some time brainstorming possible paper topics, starting to work on an argumentative thesis. It should be a literary thesis. So this is an English class. So even though we're doing a lot of historical work in this class, looking at kind of what political and historical situations led to the literature we're reading, when you sit down to write your paper, you're going to be writing a lit paper, not a history paper. And so as you read this week, start paying attention to style, to character, to voice, to all of the sort of tools that fiction writers use and poets and so on use for their work, and for memoir as well, I guess. So we'll talk about this more. Again, this is a great opportunity to use my office hours. Drop in there if you're not sure what you want to write your paper on, etc. I'll send out an assignment at the start of week 4 with the actual paper topics and so on. So if you're finding yourself confused, not sure how to get going, either on Slack or in office hours, get in touch and let's talk about it. So, okay, so that's looking ahead. Someone also asked me about grades so far. So there's not a lot of grading yet. Mostly you're getting checked off as having done or not done the various assignments, the reading journals, commenting on each other's work. So I am gonna do a big tally of all of that for the class so far, and since there's no grades involved, I'm just gonna go ahead and post that for everyone to take a look, make sure you're caught up. If you've fallen behind, please get in touch with me, okay? Like, we can often work around things. You're allowed to miss 3 assignments over the course of the semester. The key is communication, talk back and forth, and we'll try and figure out a way to keep you well supported and making good progress in this class, okay? I'm not sure. I think I may do another video or 2 this week, so keep an eye out for those that are maybe going a little more in depth into some of the readings, although mostly we'll be doing that discussion through Slack. Your readings this week, you're reading the next chapter of Leaving India by Hajratwala. So that chapter is called Cloth, and it talks a lot about the textile industry in India and in the UK, and sort of looks at the economics of how colonial industries develop, how they're pushed or forced into producing certain products for the benefit of the colonizer, and the kind of drastic and terrible results that generally has for the colonized population. Also, she looks at things like the economic tension with the weavers back home in the UK and the effects of the Industrial Revolution on all of that. So it's a great grounding for what's happening in the semester. Typically when we're in class, I actually do an assignment where I bring in yarn and crochet hooks and teach you all to crochet, so that you have a little bit of a sense of how, what it might have felt like being part of that kind of home-based production economy, which was then lost when we moved to the factory. So I'm still thinking about how we can easily do that here. I think buying you all crochet hooks and yarn and mailing it to all of you, which I did think about doing, might be a little too challenging, but maybe some of you have those at hand in your homes already. Maybe you have a family member who already does this. And I think I'm going to send out a note and ask people if they'd like to try this. And if people are interested, if even some of you are interested, we can try to put together a small lesson and around that. So keep an eye out. There'll be a question in the Slack on that. Then our other readings, there's an excerpt to Orientalism. So that's the introduction to a big, heavy book of post-colonial theory, Orientalism. We're not going to read the book in this class. In a graduate class, you would read the book. So it's an important text. It's one of the foundational texts of postcolonial lit, and in it, the author Edward Said is really issuing a challenge to faculty members, to people who are engaged in the study of the Orient. And if you go down to Hyde Park, you could visit the Oriental Institute for an example of what that is. And he's essentially arguing, this is really simplifying it dramatically, but he's essentially arguing that in their study of the Orient, they are reproducing the problems that they are studying. They are contributing to what he calls a hegemonic system, and that term, hegemony, is an important one. It's so, look that up. It's essentially kind of a system that reproduces itself, and he gets it from Foucault. And if we were in class, we might go off onto a long conversation about Foucault because he's fascinating. But I'm going to try and keep it on point. So, but if you want to read Discipline and Punish, it's a great book. And talking about how the prison system has become this self-supporting system that is its own kind of industry, and that's part of why it's so hard to reform or break it down. And you could think about how that connects to policing in America today, for example, if you wanted to connect it to current events. But to bring it back to Said and Orientalism, the book, he's essentially kind of issuing a challenge to his colleagues, and if you read the rest of the book, he calls out people pretty directly, and this book caused a lot of sort of furor in the academic community, to stop doing damage, to stop working from this position of assumed superiority against the assumed inferior Orient. And so in the intro, I'll be asking you to think about, and there's going to be study questions at the end of the week that are very targeted this time around. So I'll be asking you to think about what it is that he's arguing, what are the main supports he has for this construction of Orientalism as a thing, and as a destructive thing. So, all right, so that's the theory bit. And then we have a novel. We're starting our first novel, Passage to India. This is an older book. It's a beautiful, great book full of literary references. This is probably what I'd recommend you write your papers on out of everything we've read so far. There's so much that you could do with this novel. So pay close attention. You can also work on something like Kipling's poem or the short story, The Man Who Would Be King. Those would also be great topics. You can work on my story if you want as well. Oceans Bright and Wide. But Passage to India has a lot to work with, and yeah, just give yourself some time to read it and enjoy it. There's a movie as well, and it's a really good movie, so I'm going to give you an extra credit option to write a response to the movie, but read the book first, please, because the book is obviously a lot more dense than the movie, and there's going to be more for you to write about in response to that. Okay, I think I'm going to basically finish this off. You're writing one journal entry for each reading, so 3 readings this week, 3 entries, 5 comments on your classmates' journal entries, trying to continue the conversation. It was great to see that starting to pick up last week. I'd love to see more. And a 1-page answer to the study questions I send out later in the week. So keep an eye out for those. I'll probably send them maybe Thursday or Friday, somewhere around there. I'll remind you that you should, if you haven't met with me yet on Zoom, and more than half of you have, which is great, this week you need to, this is a requirement, find a time to meet with me. So the times are in the Zoom. There's one today, there's one Thursday, there's one Saturday, possibly another one on Wednesday. So take a look at those, stop by. They're pretty brief this week. We're just kind of checking in, getting a sense of how everything's going for you. Next week, I'm going to have sort of more directed conversations for those Zoom sessions. They will be optional, so once you do this one, you don't ever have to do another one, but I think you'll find them really helpful, and once you have 3 or 4 of you in a session, you'll be able to also talk amongst yourselves and brainstorm paper topics, look at each other's theses, give feedback, do some of that same work that we would normally do in the classroom. Okay, I think that's it. And have a great week, and I will, yeah, I'll send you stuff very soon. Okay, bye.